I've been in the habit of buying budget-friendly floor-standing speakers for a while. Think those cheap-looking cardboard boxes you see in the clearance aisle that promise big sound for a tiny price. Almost every time those cheap towers get shipped, I end up feeling a little regret when I try to fill a room with music that's supposed to fill the space. They either lack the authority to keep bass tight, or the mid-range gets mushy the moment you crank the volume up for a movie night. That's why I wanted to see if the SVS Prime Tower could be the smarter, less regrettable option. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes I'll walk through what makes these speakers feel different, who they're really built for, and the few compromises that might make you think twice before hitting add to cart. First off, the kind of room where you plan to sit matters more than a spec sheet ever will. I set up the Prime Towers in a 1,218-foot living room with a modest 5-foot TV wall and a couple of side chairs. The room has a decent amount of hardwood flooring, a few carpeted sections, and a lot of reflective surfaces, exactly the sort of environment that can make or break floor-standing speakers. From the get-go, the first thing I noticed was how quickly those 4.5-inch mid-range drivers pulled the vocals forward. I played a recent pop album, and the lead singer's voice sat directly in front of me, no matter if I was on the couch or standing at the back of the room. In a comparable setup with a lower-priced tower, I would have had to push the volume higher to hear that same clarity, and the bass would have started to flake out. The most distinctive thing about the Prime Tower is the way the crossover SVS's SoundMatch 3.5-way handles the transition between the tweeter, mid-range, and the big bass drivers. In practice, this means you get a more coherent soundstage that stays together as the volume climbs. I tested this by watching a high-action sci-fi movie with explosions, low-frequency rumbles, and fast-paced dialogue. The bass was firm enough to feel tactile without overwhelming the mids, and the dialogue never got lost in the action. That's a hidden trade-off you won't see on a spec sheet, the ability to keep the low end disciplined while still delivering the boom that makes a home theater feel immersive. If you've ever had a tower that sounded like a muddy truck, this is a clear step up. Now, who should actually consider these speakers? If you're a cinephile who likes to watch movies with a dedicated sound system, or a music lover who enjoys both rock guitars and classical strings without having to juggle separate subs, the Prime Tower fits right in. I found them especially satisfying when listening to live-recorded jazz albums. The pistons and brass came through with a kind of pinpoint accuracy that made me feel like I was sitting in front of the band. They also work well in a modest home studio setup. The well-controlled mids mean it's easier to hear the nuances of a vocal track without the coloration that some budget towers introduce. On the flip side, I'd advise someone with a tiny bedroom or a space under 1,010 feet to skip these. The driver size and the way they're tuned mean they can throw a surprising amount of energy into a room, and in a cramped space you might end up with a boomy feel that actually masks detail rather than reveals it. Similarly, if you're strictly after a minimalist aesthetic, these towers are black ash, which is elegant, but they're still fairly large and sit heavy on the floor. If you prefer a pair of bookshelf speakers that can be hidden behind a couch, you'll probably be better off with something a bit more compact. Speaking of practical strengths, the most immediate benefit I noticed was the ease of integration. The terminals accept standard binding posts, so I could hook them directly to my AV receiver without any adapters. Once connected, there was no need for extra equalizer tweaks. The sound just felt balanced right out of the gate. The pinpoint accuracy claim holds up when you listen to high-resolution test tracks. The high frequencies are clean, and the mid-range stays flat without any artificial brightening. That consistency translates to real-world usage whether you're streaming a podcast, binge-watching a TV series, or playing a video game with a dynamic soundtrack. The speakers maintain a reliable tonal balance. There are a couple of practical weaknesses to flag, though. Because the mid-range driver is sealed in its own compartment, the speakers have a slight tightness at the low end that some listeners might describe as less room-filling than a ported design. In a larger hall you might miss that extra low-frequency expansion, and you could end up needing a subwoofer to get the deepest bass you want for, say, an action movie with a thunderous soundtrack. Also, the SVS Prime Towers are fairly heavy. Each unit weighs close to 30 pounds, so moving them around for a house party or cleaning can be